Well, hello there. Welcome to the Pruskop Podcast. In this episode, I interview Kelvin Hamilton, who I'm going to dub as the cookie cutter crusher. Kelvin is an architect of nearly 40 years now that has designed this brand new listing that's just popped up here in Edmonton that is a pre-construction multifamily. This one is completely different, and there's a lot more thought put into this one to make sure that it's sustainable, not only for today's world, but also for a world a few generations from now, both for the tenants and the landlord. In the second half of this episode, we talk about the city's proposed change in bylaws, reducing the maximum unit capacity for interior lots from 8 down to 6, what that means for Edmonton as a whole, the argument from both sides, and maybe how we should be looking at it a different way. I hope you enjoyed the conversation just as much as I did. Welcome, Kelvin, to the Pruskop Podcast. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope to have some fun with you.
Yeah, this is a special episode. Could you start off with a little bit about your history and your credentials in the real estate investment world?
Yeah, for sure. As you can tell by my not having an accent, I'm from the UK, born and bred in London, and for most of my working life, I've been working in the UK. So I won't go too much into the full history. I'm family of 6, youngest of 4 boys, and a very competitive family. And one thing it has brought in my life is to be driven. I went to Oxford University and did my study in architecture. By the way, I wanted to be an architect since I was 9 years old. So
Really?
it was a journey in itself.
Were you an artist when you were little? Is that what led you into architecture?
No. Funny enough, when I was 9, I was at school. I can see it vividly. I was in the playground playing lunchtime, and there was 2 men that came on to the property, and they were led by one of the teachers around the building, and they had a tape measure, and they were there measuring up and making notes on their pad. And curious Kelvin, I thought, what are they doing? I want to know what they're doing. So I went over to them and asked them. And in seconds, I learned to be was an architect, asked me to hold the tape while he did some measuring. And so you can imagine what they did for me, seeing my friends and other people in the school looking and seeing me holding the tape. And, from that day, I said, I want to be an architect. And that gave me a focus, basically. And fighting all the odds, I got through, and I live to tell the tale now. I'm an architect, and I've been an architect for nearly 40 years. It's been my pride and joy. It's something I love doing. And it's all about being a problem solver. I guess in answering your question, which is about why is my architecture different to what you're seeing around, it is because it's about challenging yourself to do something that is unique, but at the same time attractive to the general public.
That is a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I never knew that. I was starting to tear up a little bit when you said that. It was like so relatable and so pure. But also with your architect design, I think you putting a different spin on it is a version of you keeping your passion alive for the career. Because as we said previously, a lot of these places are just cookie cutters. Like before I even look at a property, I already know what the layout is for 8 units. But yours is completely different. And yeah, I think that just goes to show, hey, I'm not just in it to copy and paste or get by, but I'm actually in it because I enjoy working on stuff like this and I find it interesting. And I think that really shines through with your work.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we'll talk about this project that we have here. So in Elmwood Park, there's a 10 unit, but it's a little bit different because it's not one building. Can you talk to us about the design and inspiration for this project?
Yeah, for sure. So as an architect, it's about problem solving, and we have to obviously abide by the bylaw that is set by the city. And what the bylaw shows, looking at the site is an interior lot, and it's a very large lot. The interior lots in that area are usually 50 foot by 140. I think it's about 50 by 140. This particular lot is 72 feet wide by 140 deep. And what the bylaw requirement states is that any interior lot, the maximum you can put on that lot is 8. And it's based on a calculation rule, which is 75 meters per unit. So when you divide the area of the lot, you have to use a number 75, and the maximum you can have is 8. So what that led me to do, because it's all about creating affordable units, was to revisit the lot size and subdivide it into two. So in subdividing it into two, using the same calculation that is given, it allows you to put 5 units on each lot, which meant we can have 10 units. And I thought it would be unique to have enough units to create a multi-family development that the economics would allow us to build much more affordable than if we were to just build 8 units on that lot. So that's really what was the undermining driver for this design. However, I always go to my principal methodology in design, and I've named it A-Seed. That's
A-Seed?
Yeah. And A-Seed stands for affordable, sustainable, eco-friendly, energy efficient design or interchangeable developments. So I use that as it's an acronym, but it's also the underlying drive to my concepts when designing affordable housing.
And that synchronizes beautifully with CMHC MOI Select. Beautifully.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's important that that being the underlying factor in my design, it creates a quality and a uniqueness, which I hope is being seen in my designs, that it's not just about designing cheap. It's about designing in place, looking at the environment, choosing the right materials, choosing the right geometry. It's important to create architecture that people can relate to. It gives like an historical feel to it. It obviously depends on the neighborhood I'm designing and building in, but you will see with my designs that there is some unique elements that is unique to that neighborhood. So I believe that's the underpinning rationale that allows my design to look a bit different. The other side I'd like to mention is that we are seeing a lot of row housing on interior lots. And as an architect with an understanding of the streetscape, the history of the street and how it was designed, row housing do not work on interior lots. And it comes down to the palatial style in which streets were defined in history.
I have to admit, what does palatial mean? I've never heard that word before.
Oh,
Palatial. What does that
like
mean?
like a palace. So if you imagine a palace or a castle, you'll have the end, you have the towers.
Yep.
Center would be the palatial, the grand entrance.
I see.
And then you have the wing that reaches out to the towers.
Yep.
So what we see with the street design, the original street design was based on that principle. So that's why when we have the corner lots, even today they say, oh, you can build a few more units on the corner lots as opposed to the inner lots. So I don't know if you're aware that the city allows, based again on the area, you can build as many as you want on the corner lots, but there's a restriction on the interior lots. So where the interior lots do not really accommodate row housing, which I find a lot of builders are doing, is that it's not addressing the street. And that is important, that you have the entry and windows facing the street on interior lots. So it gives a symmetrical look and it gives an inviting look along the streetscape as you walk down. I'm most probably boring you here.
No, I know exactly what you mean because I have seen a lot of row housing where it's like bird's eye view. It's 3 by 1, so just like one row of them. And then from the street side, when you're driving by, I have seen a couple where it's just like the side of the house. with maybe one window upstairs, one window in the basement, but there's no door. Like it doesn't, that's not the entrance because the entrance are on like the long sides of it. I know exactly what you're talking about there. Something unique that I've seen starting to catch on is instead of doing like 1 by 4 units or 1 by 3 units, bird's eye view once again doing 2 by 2s. I've seen
Exactly.
that becoming a lot more popular.
Yeah.
But that's still nothing like what you've done. You were very smart with yours, and I didn't understand it at first either. I'm like, why wouldn't you just do one big building? And then you explained to me there's a maximum of these many units per interior lot. So if I split this one giant lot into 2 lots, then we can get additional housing on here, and it makes more sense that way. So, oh, this man knows his stuff. He's really thinking about this, not just on how do I make something that looks pretty, but something that actually maximizes the finances of this project as well. And you, yeah, very cool. I showed one of your renderings to a friend of mine that's also a multifamily investor. And as soon as he looked at the rendering, he's like, that's a flat, just like they do in the UK. And I was like, how did you know that? Like, he is from the UK. So even just the kind of like your cultural history of where you've lived is also influencing the place as well. Something else that's different about your property. So, A, we have 2 structures. So 5 units, 5 units, but also the breakdown on what you do for each floor of the structure with the suite mix and how you use the basement and how the units for dwellings are all above grade. What was your logic with that?
My logic really was surrounding accessibility, creating units that are accessible to be more sensitive for the more disabled or people who aren't wanting or can't go up on another level. So I wanted to create units on the main floor that is more for a single senior person can actually live there. It's not fully, I will be truthful, because of these unit sizes, it's not fully adaptable for accessibility. Like it hasn't got the full accessible bathroom, which is considerably larger. By that being said, all the openings and the hallways and the way walking around in those units, it is sufficient for someone my age who's getting old,
Yeah.
but can still get around and move through smaller spaces. That's a good way of putting it. But it's also for younger people that are slightly disabled but can live alone. So I was thinking along those lines. Again, it's down to creating units for all types of people. Now, on the next level, I had created more of a family size unit, which is a 3 bed unit. I was thinking a lot on people coming into Edmonton, and for the first year, they want to be closer to downtown to get familiar with Edmonton before they decide to spread their wings and maybe move into another house in a year or two, depending on their finance. So I wanted to create somewhere that they could call home, feel comfortable there, but yet it's sustainable. It's size-wise, they can afford it, and creating storage that they can obviously have
Can you talk
storage.
about the storage there? Because that's something that's very different too.
Yeah, so I think it's, I guess being a immigrant myself, we in a sense rely on storage for, especially with a family, to have somewhere that we can store things we don't really aren't ready to get rid of. And so I see it's very important and it's part and parcel of everyone's lifestyle, I believe, especially today. And as we design more sustainably, we need to really make our homes functional, not a place to hoard things because you've got so much space. So I think it helps one to be more organized and to have storage on site that they can always just pop downstairs and check if they need something, but they don't need it every day. They can have it stored in their own lockup, heated storage space. It just adds that extra amenity that I believe everybody needs today. So I always design sensitively as if, what would I like if I was going to be living in this place? I also challenge myself, could I live here? Could I live in this?
Mm.
And ensure that when I design sensitively in a way that I can feel confident that people who live in those spaces do feel comfortable and it meets their needs.
I have to admit that I didn't realize there was so much thought that you put into drawings or that architects have. Like, obviously, I know you're passionate about your job and your work looks beautiful, but I never really realized just how much thought goes into it. Not only are you thinking of this as an architect, you're also thinking of this as a builder. You're also thinking about this of what if you were owning this place and you were the landlord of this place, but you're also thinking about what if you were the tenant. Like, every aspect of someone who would interact with this property, including property management. Like all of your units are separately metered for water, gas, and electrical, which means property management. That makes their job easier too. Like literally everybody that would be involved on this property or project, you have influence in the design to make their lives easier in one way or another. That's so neat.
It is a big responsibility, and I won't say otherwise. As a true architect, you are designing for people, and you've got to think at every level to try and understand and to challenge yourself. Why am I doing this? Not because I like it. There has to be a reason behind it too. And this is why, as I say, the driving force behind my designs, specifically for multifamily, is a seed. It keeps me on my toes. It makes me understand why it's important to choose this material as opposed to that material, because that material is a lot cheaper. A lot cheaper today, but in the long run, it's more expensive. It's better to go for a bit more quality, which may cost a little bit more, but
In the
you
short
know
term,
more exactly. It's going to be more durable. It's going to be better for the owner of the property, that he doesn't need to worry about certain things that are going to need to be replaced early because of its durability. Everything I do, I am looking at longevity of the building, not just with the design. You don't want the building to go out of date over a few decades. You want this building to always be present in its surroundings, that it's ageless. And so you use the right materials to substantiate that too. So that's why I always think of the owner, who's going to be the owner of this building, and to ensure that he or she or they, the company, whatever, knows that their maintenance is going to be relatively low compared to maybe other buildings they're buying, which are older stock and new stock that are not thinking to the level that I hope I'm thinking, to ensure that everybody's happy.
well, even something as small as the hardware or the lighting fixtures or putting the closet shelving up. If you cheap out on those, and you can get them for very cheap, and you're probably fine for a year or two, but it's just gonna need replacing. It's gonna get broken. Somebody bumps into it, somebody hangs something heavy, and the anchors get pulled out of the walls. Now the tenant has to talk to the property manager, and the property manager has to hire a maintenance guy, and then they have to send that bill over to the landlord, and then the landlord has to pay for it, and then they
Mhm.
actually have to do the work. Like, it's a lot. Like a lot of triggers. It's not just okay, it's fixed now. That's just a closet shelf, and how many steps were introduced there? What?
Exactly.
So I think the materials and also the skill of the people who are installing said materials go way longer than people realize and really do affect the property in the long run, not just how it looks, but how it functions. I think from my perspective, some of the highlights of your property, A, it's super cool. Two separate detached structures being sold together as one property, but separate detached structures so that more units have the exterior windows, so there's going to be brighter on the inside. The fact that the basement isn't a unit, basement is storage and mechanical room. So all of the units are above grade. So between the two buildings, there's a total of 8 one-bedrooms and then 2 three-bedrooms. So you do have a good tenant mix or suite mix of what kind of tenants you're going to bring in there. And for it to be up higher as well, you're going to have a nice view from the top floor. That would be great. And something that first caught my eye was that you have an actual parking lot in the back. 99%. Actually, I think all of them that I've seen, the standard traditional cookie cutter infills, they either don't have a garage at all, or they just have a normal, like 4x1 garage, like 4 bays, and it's just a long and skinny garage. But there's not enough parking for anybody. And we'll get into the city bylaws that are discussing a bit later here, but Even with putting the 4 single bay garages, there's not enough parking for 8 units. You're missing at least 4 spaces. But yours, you actually have a proper parking lot in the back. And for people that are like, but I won't have storage because the parking lot's open, you do have storage in the basement and it's covered and it's heated. That's something very unique. Is there certain requirements that you have to work around in order to put a parking lot on, or why do you think that other developers aren't doing a standard parking lot and they're going with normal garages?
Well, to be frank, we do not really need to provide parking,
Mhm.
especially in a city. But we're living in a country where we have long winters, and that tends to lead to people needing a car and therefore parking space. Again, it's down to sensitivity. We're building in mature neighborhoods, and the neighbors are used to a certain number of cars on the street and used to maybe having a space to park their cars. And when we are now intensifying these lots to create more affordable housing, that naturally is going to bring higher use of cars. And so that again is something that I always look at to see how many vehicles I can fit on the lot. And I do try to fit as many as possible, but I do know it's challenging. And we really do have to change our lifestyle, but we do need the city to work with us and to provide good transport, a good transport system. And I think they're trying, and I think we're in that transition stage. But this one is unique. There was enough sites in the way I designed the buildings to be compact enough to create as much site area to achieve what I achieved on this particular project. So this is, I shouldn't say a one-off. This is a good
Unique.
example of balancing it all out. I wouldn't say that is a big priority for affordable housing because if you look at it realistically, when we talk about affordable housing, we're talking about people that may not be able to afford a car readily. Being sensitive more to the neighbors in this aspect, I had created more parking. But I don't think we need to provide as many parking spaces as I had done on this project because I do realize that a lot of people can just about afford to live in a home and to pay their bills than to have to buy a car and to pay the insurance and all these other costs. So I'm mindful that I am focusing on creating more affordable housing. Long way of answering your question. I hope I've answered it.
Yeah,
But
no, I think that's brilliant because when I speak to investors that are interested into multifamily, almost always one of their first questions are, but there's not enough parking. Is that going to turn off tenants if they don't have anywhere to park their car? And as much as Edmonton keeps trying to push the 15-minute city, which it may work, I would argue that we need a little bit more density before it to fully function properly. But even if we're heading in that direction, people are still going to have cars, and more people, more cars are still going to come. So, yeah, parking is a big concern for a lot of investors wanting to think long term about the attractiveness of their property because with these infills that are catching fire here, there's a lot of competition. So, what's the edge that my property has over that property down the street? I think that's a huge benefit to the landlord in the long run that they have that advantage over the competition.
definitely.
With this project, there's 3 different kinds of income streams. Can you talk about how you've designed this for not just rental income from the actual units, but other areas as well?
Yeah, so as mentioned, we touched on it, both parking and storage. Usually that's extra amenities that you don't find in many of these properties. And with that, we also know that some people don't need storage. Some people may come into a unit and they have the opportunity to say, I don't want storage. So they don't, it's not as if they automatically have to include storage as part of their rent. So that storage can be given up to a neighbor on the street because it's all about community. When I'm designing about community. So we need to design and make available if need be, if first come, first serve, as I say, with regards to those who are living in the actual units. have first pass to say, yes, I want the amenity space or I want the parking space. But if not, instead of just leaving them vacant, it gives the landlord an opportunity to rent it out to someone else to keep the income, the revenue going month to month. So that's something that the owner can decide on how he wants to rent the parking and the storage, and they could be done separate to the actual rental of each of the units.
Once again, the landlord or owner side, it's brilliant that the units are all separately metered as well, so they don't have to get involved in the upstairs is using more lights than we are. How come we're paying 30% or whatever? They can just
Mhm.
eliminate that conversation altogether. Of course, each unit has their own laundry, so there's not a common area laundry. People can feel like they have their own home, completely independent, which gives them some form of pride as well. And these units have AC. Like, talk about bells and whistles. That's amazing to have AC in these units. I've talked to lots of people that really regret renting a place without AC.
Mhm.
Your landlord that ends up buying this will very much have an edge on everyone else trying to get the tenants into their places.
Yeah, as I said, I could be one of their tenants because, as I said, I was designing these units as if I was to live in it, what would I like? And I know it might be a little bit more in the way of construction costs, but this is the challenge of finding the right equipment for the right price to be within the budget that we have. But one thing I can say for certain is that these units, the landlord or the owner, the future owner, will not have problems in renting out these units because there are a lot of people looking to move from where they are to the next level and to be able to find unique, affordable units like what we are building and designing in Edmonton. I think it's going to change the minds of a lot of renters and realize that they can live in a unit that they enjoy and they can still afford. So it's a
Mhm.
win-win.
To have these extra amenities on here, and some investors might be thinking extra amenities, that means that it's frivolously expensive, but it's not because the amenities that you're providing actually have a ton of value. You're not paying to have, a gold toilet or anything. You're putting money into things that the landlord themselves will get value out of, and the tenants will get value out of as well. So you're not doing it just for the sake of being different. You're doing it because it's different and it works in the favor of everybody.
Yeah, it's all about functional living, and you're correct. It's all about amenities that we really need. It's part of our lifestyle. And yeah, it really helps both the tenant and the landlord. Because at the end of the day, owners, landlord, they want to help people. I know a lot of people think, oh, they're just there for the money to make money off people, but they don't have to do that. They can find other ways in spending their money. But they see that they're able to, yes, make money, but at the same time, they're helping society. They're providing homes for people. And communities need home. A good community needs good homes.
Yeah. Overall, once again, I never knew just how in-depth your thought process is behind these designs, and that was really interesting to get to know more behind it. And I'm sure we only touched the tip of the iceberg with our conversation here. I know
I
there's
don't
way
want to
more
bore
behind
you.
it. No, I think that's amazing. Any last notes on this listing that we have here?
I believe that I hope you can tell that a lot of heart and soul has gone into these designs. It's not just, oh, let's just put a box here. Every line drawn, every window location, it's about function and making sure each space gets the best quality. It's about creating environmentally friendly properties, units that will last a long time and that both the user and the owner will be happy with the product.
Yeah, we should also mention the builder because no matter how great of a design you have, it doesn't matter if that's not what, materializes in real life, right? So the builder that we have is who you're partnered with, and they've been in business since I believe the late 70s. They're a
Early
big boy builder. This isn't like a pop-up in the middle of the night shop builder. This is the complete opposite. They're big.
exactly. It's important when we choose our partners We're knowing that we're going to ensure quality is there. And Montorio Homes, their builder, is a family business. They take pride in what they do. They're an Italian company, and Vince is a great character. And he and his son, Martino, are very passionate Italians. And so I know I'm in good hands when it comes to the construction side of things, that they will ensure the quality that we're trying to make will be there. And they're, like myself, not interested in having substandard or sub-quality work and finishes. So I'm very confident that I've partnered with the right team, to create the right product for Edmonton right now.
Yeah, because from the buyer side of things, when we're looking at these pre-con multis, is A, do the numbers make sense? B, who is the builder? Why would I trust them? Because the builders are in a position where they can get away with screwing you over if they wanted to, or they weren't good builders. And then C, does this actually make sense long term? So that's what the buyers are looking at on their side of things. And I know this checks all of those boxes. And I found it funny. We had a big meeting with Vince and you and Jel as well. And I was asking a little bit about the plans for like the construction. And I just realized, like, well, these guys are pros. I look like the silly one here, even mentioning, oh, have you thought about this yet? They're like, yeah, like, duh. That's amazing, though, that you guys really know your stuff.
Yep, it's great. They make me feel confident that, what I've initiated in way of design thinking and everything like that, I've got the right support system to ensure that we achieve our objective and we successfully execute another project.
Absolutely. All right, we'll wrap up that discussion, and I will put the listing link in the description below so that people can check that out. And I'll also be sharing some photos here so people can see that as well. Let's dive in. I want to talk about the City Hall drama that's been going on about these inline lots versus corner lots and all the feelings that are going around. You've been at City Hall these past couple days in person with your own eyes, and you're an advocate right now for the builders, so you're very involved in this. What have you seen at City Hall? What's going down?
It's been an event, and I should be there even now. It's still happening right now as we speak. There's a lot of people who are for and against the new bylaw which the city is looking to implement. As some of us may know, there was a bylaw or a new bylaw put in place in 2024 where the RS zoning, the RS meaning small
Small
scale
scale real estate.
residential, was allowing a maximum of 8 units on interior lots. And what the outcry which I'm discovering is that a lot of the existing neighbors are not happy with the products that are coming into their neighborhood. The main concern is the size of these new buildings. They're concerned with the way the entrances to these buildings, because it's mainly row housing that they are locating on these interior
And
lots.
that's exactly what we were talking about earlier, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So they're having like 3 or 4 entries coming off the side or the flank of the building to enter into the unit. So existing neighbors are making complaints saying it's people are overlooking and making their complaints. But the main concern which I hear coming from those who are, I should say, in support of what the city is trying to do, because the city is suggesting that they reduce now what was 8 units on the inner lot maximum. They want to reduce it to 6, whereas people like myself are saying we're defeating the true objective of what we're trying to do as a city, which is to create more affordable homes and to have Edmonton a city that is inviting newcomers and young families.
My thought on that as well, even if they do reduce it from 8 to 6, there's still going to be like big structures there that entrances are going to be on the flank. What a great word for that, by the way, flank. I'm going to borrow that from you. And they're still going to be as tall. They might not be as long, but they're still going to be giant structures. And of course, parking is a concern that citizens are bringing forward as well, but there's still not going to be enough parking either. So how much of a difference or how much of the problems are you actually resolving by eliminating only 2 units?
Yeah, the problem really lies with the viability of a project.
Mm,
It's like the straw that breaks the camel's back. One thing with developers have to ensure that the numbers make sense to build. And when we look at the cost of land, cost of materials, the way we have to construct today as compared to 10 years ago, even because of all this energy laws that have come in place now that we got to design and build in a certain way, it costs money. Going for a 6 unit apartment building is going to cause a lot of developers not to go ahead because the project doesn't make financial sense. And so it will cause a big, I'm trying to think of the right word, it's going to defeat the objective of the city, the remit of the city. And the city has been doing a great job up until now. And I think it's because they've been distracted by the noise of the same people that have been complaining way back when the skinnies, when they were against the skinnies, they said, oh, if we have the skinnies, it's going to change the character of our neighborhood and blah, blah, blah. And how many years later, they love the skinnies. It's brought in a lot of nice people into the neighborhood.
that's something else I was talking about, as well as even if they got rid of the multis in inline units or inline land,
Yeah.
then they'd still just be building like giant houses, like tall houses. It may not take up as much of a footprint, but it's still going to be a 2 story at least. There's still going to be a garage in the back. Like it's going to get developed. And another thing is, I work with a lot of builders that are looking for lots to redevelop. That's what they do. But even if I show them a property that is priced well just for the cost of the dirt, but they see that there's a fully functioning, decent house on there, they're not interested in demolishing that. They're like, no, that house is too nice. I'm like, forget about the house. The price of the dirt and the price of the listing makes sense. Like, no, that's too nice of a house. I don't want to break it down. And maybe that's just the developers I'm talking to, but I doubt that I'm that special. So, like, developers aren't knocking down nice, beautiful homes or well-maintained homes. They're knocking down the eyesores that have been boarded up and smell like cat pee and are a biohazard to the neighbors. Like,
Exactly.
you know?
Yeah, you're dead right. You're dead right. We are looking for properties that need to be removed and replaced by buildings that's going to enhance or better the street. And I think we have, especially architects and developers, builders as well, we have a responsibility to create buildings that will be attractive, not just for today, for next generations. And we need to set a mark. I want my buildings, I speak on my buildings, I want my buildings to be time markers. So 50 years from now, people looking back and looking at my buildings tell them a story of what it was like, why we thought the way we thought today. So they recognize how we were thinking about them for tomorrow. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? So
Yeah.
I think we have a duty to write the history. This is why we should build structures that people don't readily want to pull down because they look ugly or they just don't look right in the street. And I find a lot of these eightplexes that are row housing right now or are being built 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, will they be appreciated? That's a challenging question because they don't look right on the street. They may be pulled down and redeveloped if they can
Mm.
afford to.
Yeah. And like you were mentioning, if they change these bylaws, that They're going to be hurting the developers, which in turn are going to be hurting the investors, which in turn are going to be hurting the potential tenants or the residents that are moving or looking for affordable housing
And
here in
offer jobs.
Edmonton. But this is just my personal opinion. I think the city is only entertaining potentially dropping 2 units as like a halfway mark of, okay, guys, we listened to you and all of your complaints. Fine. Here's something. I think that's what they're doing.
For sure, they are, but it's a knee-jerk reaction and not thought through. And I'm hoping that what they've heard from those who are not in support of changing, especially so early, they've not given us a chance to really develop. Most of these, remember, this just started in
This
January
is so
2024.
new. Yeah.
So projects are just now going through permitting to get ready to go on site and be built. So this has just seen the beginning and they're already crying out saying, oh, it's too much. It's unfortunate that I have to say there's no vision. And coming from where I come from, coming from the UK, we're far ahead of where we are here in Edmonton. So I'm coming with eyes looking
You have
forward,
a crystal
realizing
ball. Yeah.
exactly, I realize where we need to go and that we need to move quicker than what we're moving right now, where people are saying we're moving slow. No, we're not moving fast enough. And I appreciate the city trying, but I would go as far, and I have said it to them that we haven't gone far enough with the intensification. Because if we're going to keep this city affordable and think about our children and our children's children, we have to build more missing middle developments. Otherwise, we're going to end up like Vancouver and Toronto, Seattle, and those type of cities here in North America, having to build tall tower blocks and still not being able to make them affordable enough for people, young people, to live in.
I
And
think
so we have
it's
an opportunity to prevent that.
it's a bit silly because they're huge, like their biggest reason for bringing that bylaw forward of now you can do 8 units on an interior lot is for affordability. That was their main message. There's other stuff with it, but that was like the meat and potatoes of it. And it's already starting to work. It's already starting to work with the competition of the cookie cutter infill multifamily row housing. It's already starting to work. I've talked to property managers about it where the rents are starting to slightly soften for them
Mm.
because they are copy and paste. There's a lot of competition for it. It's working exactly like they wanted it to with their original goal. And now they're like, oh, well, maybe no. It's like, it's working though, exactly like you wanted to, only a year and a half later. And now you want to pull the plug on it or make it harder? It just doesn't
Mhm.
make sense to me.
It doesn't. And as I said, I think the problem is that there's been a lot of people complaining, those people being, they don't like it, but I call them the NIMBYs, not in my back.
NIMBYs?
Yeah, that's obviously the acronym, not in my backyard. And
Oh,
so,
yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. It's just that's people being like, yeah, it can happen, just not in my backyard.
yeah,
NIMBYs. I
yeah,
gotta
that's
say
what
that
we
too.
call them, NIMBYs. And that is, unfortunately, it's a selfish way of looking at it because I look at the big picture and I say, let's go back in time. Let's say the indigenous people said, no, you can't build your farms in this area. There wouldn't be any farmlands. And if the farmer said, no, I'm not going to give up this land for you to build these single homes because of you guys who come back from the war and need somewhere to live and started to create. This is how the city developed. And they created these single story, small houses in the 40s and that. And now, if they said, oh, you can't build a two-story, the point I'm making is that we are progressing and we're going through a transitional period. There's more people coming into Edmonton. We need to accommodate and to create affordability. And if you want to still live in that suburban style of living, you've got to move out because we are now in a city. It's no longer a small town. And this is the frustration that I have with people not thinking about others. They're thinking more about themselves. Nostalgia is in their mind. They're not seeing clearly what the city is trying to do. The city is planning for the future. We need to work with this growing pain that we're going through as we go through this transition.
You touched on a couple of things. So throughout this whole conversation, I was thinking in my head of, I wonder if there was an uproar back in the 50s, 60s, 70s when they started
Oh,
to build all of the little bungalows with the glass stucco siding, because those are like so traditional. And I'm
mhm.
sure, as you said, in a couple decades, what we're building now is going to be traditional, right? So yeah, that's something I think about was were people pissed off back
All
then
the time.
when there's a bunch of tiny little bungalows with stucco siding going on?
Yeah.
It's the same
And
thing, guys. It's just new
yeah,
growing pains.
and that's the problem. And these same people who are complaining now, if the city didn't push forward and think for the future, those people wouldn't be living in those communities that they are living and enjoying right now. And they need to be selfless and realize there's other people who would love to live in those communities, but they can't afford it.
Mm.
And this is why we need to build and intensify land to create these affordable units for those people to enjoy those neighborhoods too. And the neighborhood will not lose its quality. The vibrancy will be there in a different way because new people are going to be moving in and bringing in their lifestyle and the way they enjoy life. So
And even though Edmonton's a very active city, as a whole, like I was looking at, I think it's called the poverty map of Edmonton, and it shows like red, green, yellow areas of the kind of the higher income earners versus lower income earners by community. And that was like from 10 years ago, and it hasn't changed all that much. There's a couple yellows that turn to green and a couple reds that turn to orange, but more or less the kind of like stigmas of each neighborhood is very consistent. By throwing an infill in there, it's not going to turn your area from a green to a red. And yeah, I think the neighborhoods kind of each have their own story.
they do. What I'm used to back in the UK is that the the government or the city, we use the city, their remit was to create more social mobility. So that meant bringing those who are not as well off than others into the areas of where the well off are and to integrate that. Because why? It changes the mindset of people when they're based on their environment. If they're in a nice environment, they're going to change the way they think. They're
Mhm.
going to have more respect, if I use that word, for the space they're living in. And it just changes the old family dynamics. And this is what we have to always consider. We can't keep having not in my backyard because they're lower than me. We have to remember that we are one community. And if we help each other, we're going to have less crime. We're going to have less antagonism between different cultures and people. And as an architect, that's really my game. I've got to paint, I've got to create communities where people are comfortable and they enjoy living there and they feel that their level or standard of living and quality of life has increased because they've moved into one of my properties. That's the plan I wanted to create in Edmonton, and I hope to fulfill that as I work with great builders like Montoya Homes.
Something else that you were talking about, you and Angel are 100% on the same page because we just had a conversation this morning talking more about the like lower income people in the city. And we were talking about like Boyle Street area, Macaulay, and how it's just a matter of time before those areas get turned over. You're right next to downtown, you're right next to the river, you're right next to Rogers Place. And as of right now, there's a kind of a negative stigma on that area, but I think it's going to flip. It's going to take time, but it's going to flip. And something she was saying is that we need to spread out the lower income population, stop moving them from you're in this pocket to now we're moving you over to this pocket of the city. No, she's like other systems. I can't remember if she was saying UK or somewhere else. I can't remember, but she was saying that each community has a shelter there. So it's not northeast side of Edmonton is where the lower income people are. No, every single neighborhood has a quote unquote
Exactly.
blemish. All of them are evened out. So it's something very smart that she said is you guys have the fortunate problem of having too much space right now. And if we didn't have as much space as we have right now, we most likely would have adopted the system where we have shelters in every single neighborhood and that would unify everybody because everybody is exposed to that. There wouldn't be necessarily a much nicer neighborhood without lower income people. It would bring us all to the same level. And I thought
Exactly.
that was very, very cool.
Yeah. No, that is really how it works. Society progresses as we pull each other together. And if we leave people behind, it creates a stigma on us. We don't want to go down certain areas because of what we see. So the way we clean it up is that we've got to do our part in bringing them into our home, so to speak. When I say that, allowing them to be in our community, but we provide for them to help them to overcome whatever issues they have and to feel a sense of place. They have a sense of place for themselves and they don't feel like they're outcasts. It's a fine line, but it is achievable. We've seen it. We've seen success stories of it, and I'd be happy to do it here.
What you were saying before about the current bungalow owners with the stucco siding benefited from the last kind of growing pains that we had in Edmonton of doing those said bungalows. They're benefiting from it. Now they don't want the next wave to come around. It kind of reminds me when I was super, super young and I didn't know much. I was told the narrative of like immigrants are coming to Canada and taking our jobs. And my teacher, I made that point to him and he looked at me and I'll never forget this. He's like, Megan, you were an immigrant once too. What is your lineage? I'm like Ukrainian?
Yeah,
He's like, you're an immigrant too. There's nothing special about you. These people that are coming in are doing the exact same things that your family did in the past. And similar to exactly what you're saying of instead of immigrants be like tenants migrating to different communities of okay, you benefited of you immigrating into this community, but now you don't want anybody else to come, but
yeah,
you've already you did exactly what they did. It's the exact same
exactly.
thing.
You
Hmm.
just came earlier. You're just fortunate to come earlier. Uh,
Exactly.
This is where I've got to think of the future. And one thing I want to just leave us with in remembering is that the land we are on right now was, in a sense, given to us by the indigenous people. And we've got to be careful on how we desire to keep sprawling out and moving out into other areas as if we can just, it's like me inviting you into my home and I say, this is your room. You can do what you want in this room. And you decide, I want to go upstairs without asking me. And you go up there and you start living upstairs. Indirectly, that's what we're doing to the indigenous people. And I think if we go back and look at the treaties and all those things, we'll start to see that we're in contravention of what we agreed with them because of the way we are sprawling and we're moving out and developing in other areas. And I say we need to be more sustainable in the way we're living here in Edmonton. There's a lot of space still here downtown in the room that we've been given to inhabit. And we shouldn't be looking to just keep sprawling out and going on to sacred land. I think we don't realize the sacred land to the indigenous people that we are just going on and thinking that we own it because the city is allowing us to go and build in these areas. So this is another aspect that I don't think
I've never thought about
a lot of
that.
them,
Complete
yeah,
transparency. And that's an excellent point. I've thought of it on the expense side of things that sprawling out, it's way more expensive for the city for infrastructure. And that's why they want to pass on the cost to developers building up and building more dense rather than continuing to
mhm,
building green space. But we feel entitled that this land is all our land, but it's not. And we can't
exactly,
just keep reaching forever because eventually we're going to get our wrist slap and told get
exactly,
out of my get out of the upstairs. You belong in your bedroom. I gave you your
yeah,
room. Why are you up here?
yeah, dead right.
You're giving me a lot to think about today for sure. Any last notes, Kelvin?
No, I think I've spoken more than enough, and I hope what I've shared has been inspiring. I hope that what this does is allow people to see that we are thinking about them. To the owner who's wanting to buy our units, we've been thinking about you when we put this design and we constructed this building. We also are thinking about your future tenants to make sure that they can look after your building and see the building as their home and that they respect that home because they realize that a lot of thought has gone into it.
I think that's a perfect message. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelvin, for your time today. I really appreciate it. What a fantastic conversation.
Thank you, Megan.
All right, I'll
Take-
talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.